There's a myriad of reasons why a church can suffer with poor culture. Unfortunately, I'm not going to cover all of those today. I'm going to stick to what I know, which is relationships, community, and the overall church culture. And a church culture, I believe, comes out of deep, committed community. And so we're going to look at three specific things that might exist inside your church or be lacking inside your church. They can be signs that you have a toxic culture and therefore a community that needs some work. So let's dive right in. The first thing is, if you are attending a church and nobody really knows whether or not you are there on a Sunday morning or when the doors are open in the church, that's a problem. Now, this is most easily seen inside of a large church, and being at a smaller church, we've actually had a number of people come into our church from a larger church here in town and just say, you know, one of the things that I realized is that I was coming to church faithfully every week, and then I left for vacation or whatever, and I never heard from anybody in the church. I didn't tell anybody where I was going. I didn't tell them how long I was going to be gone, but it just felt like people didn't care whether or not I was there. This is a major, major problem because the church is supposed to be united in one body and committed to each other and helping build each other up, which means that if you're going to church regularly, you need good, strong relationship and you need a community wrapped around you, which also means that if you are absent for 3-4 weeks, people should be wondering about that and people should care whether or not you are there. Now, this is incredibly difficult to accomplish the larger a church gets. There are churches that do this very well. They are very committed to establishing and creating good small group ministries and a sense of community inside their church and regularly challenging their people to talk to new people who come into the church and to build relationships quickly. So that's one thing that you can do. If this is happening inside your church, if you have felt this in your church, I would recommend that you talk to somebody in leadership at the church and just say, hey, look, I felt this before. I felt like I really don't know whether or not people care if I'm here on a Sunday morning, and I find that a little bit concerning. Can you help me get plugged into the church? I don't necessarily think this is a reason to leave a church, but it can certainly be a sign of a culture that needs some help and some management. The other way that you can help to fix this particular problem in your interpersonal relationships on a Sunday morning is to skip some small talk. Don't talk about the weather. Choose not to talk about just this and that or the other. What do you do for a living? Whatnot. Why don't you go straight to the sermon? What is this sermon series on? What was your favorite worship song? Is there any part of this service this morning that really made an impact on you? Asking questions like that can help you skip past the small talk and build deeper and better relationships. Now, I know I've given large churches a hard time, but even on a church that's bigger than about 50 people, you can find yourself shying away and moving into the background. And so I really want you to find 3 to 5. The third thing that you can do is find 3 to 5 people to talk to every week. Target them. They don't have to be your same age, but try to stay connected intentionally with at least a 2-minute conversation with the same few people every Sunday, 3 to 5 people, and that will help you start to build some of those stronger relationships inside your church. So I hope that helps. The other thing that you can do is you can read this passage of scripture, John chapter 17, verses 20 through 26. Absolutely beautiful passage. This passage has absolutely changed my life. It's Jesus praying for you specifically, and he's promising you that you can be unified with the church, and that is something that is available to you. So I recommend that you go and dive in and to study that passage in depth. The second thing that can be a marker of a church that has a poor or an unhealthy culture is that there is not an established culture of honor. Now, what I mean by honor is not necessarily knights in suits of armor and stuff like that, but some signs of how this could crop itself up is if volunteers are always kind of grumpy, if volunteers seem to always be in need of constant praise, or on the other side of that, if you've been serving in a church for a really long time and you have you've never been thanked for your service, if you've never been, publicly recognized for working on a volunteer basis inside the church, that's a little bit concerning. Another way that this can pop itself out, that a lack of a culture of honor, is that leadership stays inside their own lane. The pastor feels like he's there just to preach. And he's not really all that concerned with what the worship guy is doing, and the worship guy is just there to do what he thinks is right to do in the music, and then he is just concerned about that, and then the youth guy is just concerned about youth. And so it feels like there's multiple different groups and pockets of relationships built inside the church, and therefore many different reasons why people are coming to the church. They'll say, I'm here for the preaching because I really like the way that this guy preaches. The music, the kids ministry, or I'm here because, man, this youth pastor really cares about my kids and takes care of them. Everything else is just kind of, I don't know, but I care so much about my kids that I'm going to go for the youth ministry specifically. A culture of honor is a place where people look to celebrate others' wins, and this trickles down from the leadership, church leadership, all the way to the people in the congregation and the chairs of the pews. And so here at our church, what we're trying to do is we're trying to champion each other's wins. Now, I'm on staff here at my church, and so I try to champion the youth guys' wins. I try to champion my senior pastor's wins or the children's director's wins in order to help them know that they're not in ministry alone, first of all, and secondly, to let the church know that we're having wins. That is a huge way, because if you celebrate people's wins with them, they're going to come to you when they need counseling through the losses as well, and it can really bind you together in relationship. So look for ways to celebrate wins. Find ways to encourage people. Now, this is a little bit different than celebrating people's wins. When you encourage somebody, imagine it as if you are putting courage into them. All right. If you see somebody who needs some encouragement, you are putting courage back into them so that they can continue on the hard road that it is to sometimes be a believer and walk in faith. Also, the third thing you can do is share testimonies with leadership, both of the good and the bad, but especially the good and the encouraging things and the inspirational things that you usually tuck inside your heart and you just carry outside with you. Take those things and share it with the leadership of your church. It can be really, really encouraging to your pastoral staff, and tell them that you really long for your church to be one that has a culture of honor. Now, this is not like a proud, braggy thing, but a culture of honor is something that we are actually called to do in Scripture. If you want to do a little bit further study on this, you can go to Romans 12, verse 10, outdo one another in showing honor. It's the only competitive calling that we have as believers. So you can go there and continue studying on what it means to be involved in a culture that honors. The third thing that can reveal a difficult or bad church culture is a generation gap. Now, this isn't inherently a bad thing. In fact, I would argue that it's really, really healthy for a church to have people who are in different stages of life engaged in ministry together. However, when each generation seems to be at war with another generation, then you've got a problem. You see, a lot of times in modern churches, and especially in the spheres that I'm working in, there's a big separation between congregational music that is praise and worship and some that is like hymn style or more of a classical feel or high church feel. And so a lot of churches choose to do a divided service where they have a few modern worship songs and a few hymns, right? But it never sounds the same. It never really sounds like the same band playing it. And so at our church, what we've done is we've tried to do unified worship. We will do some traditional hymns with traditional melodies, but we're going to do it in a way that our band sounds pretty much the same as when we are doing praise and worship stuff, which is really where we've started to lean heavier. So worship style could be a constant battle, but this could also be about style, taste, as far as architecture is concerned, or what color of the carpet, or if this stuff is a really big deal, the stuff that really doesn't have much eternal value is really becoming a soapbox or a hill on which to die between generations. That can be really, really detrimental to a church's culture. Another sign of this is if there is not an opportunity for intergenerational mingling, whether that be from mentor to mentee, or just a small group, or a Sunday school class where multiple generations of people can gather together. That can be a little bit detrimental to your culture, because you really want a culture that has the wisdom of ages past and the newness and fervor of younger ages, and you want to see the passion for Christ in both generations as well. It's really hard to see that if they're always separated from each other. And so one of the things that you can do, the first fix would be to find somebody from the older generation to mentor you. I think it's very, very valuable to find a mentor. Look at somebody, find somebody, learn their story, offer to pay for their meal, and find out, kind of interview a few older people in your church, and take them to meals or coffees over the next few weeks, and find out their stories, and find out if that's the type of person that you want to be in however many years. The other thing that you can do is also find somebody to mentor. Find a younger person in your church who you really believe that you can help, who you really believe that you can teach something about Scripture or the Bible or a prayer life, and ask them if they would like to be mentored. Very rarely have I ever asked somebody if they would like to be mentored and they said no. It is a huge opportunity to have a voice in someone's life, and to be a catalyst for their spiritual growth, and to show them that you value them enough, and you see something in them that maybe God is calling out in a really cool way. You can do some further study on this in Ephesians 6:12, and that says, we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against rulers, against authorities, against cosmic powers over this present darkness, against spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. And so we're not wrestling against people, we're wrestling against spiritual things and eternal things. And so if this person has eternal value, isn't it worthwhile to fight for a relationship with them where you can learn from their mistakes, you can learn from their successes? Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video and to talk about church culture. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. If you would take a second to subscribe to this channel, that would be so awesome and help me out a lot. So I appreciate it. If you would like to do some more studying on how to build a better church community, you can head on over to jasonhunley.com, where I've got some free resources in order to help you on your community building journey. Thank you for tuning in.